The following program is underwritten by the Nevada Irrigation District. Since 1921, providing clean and healthy drinking and irrigation water to more than 24,000 homes, farms, schools, and businesses in Nevada and Placer counties.
NCTV interviews, and today we're going to learn about conflict and conflict resolution. I've been chatting with Diane Helms, who is president of the Conflict Resolution Center in Nevada City, and also Liz Mantle, who is the, what would you call yourself there?
The executive director.
Executive director, good, and is there at the office probably more than anyone else.
Yes.
So welcome to you both to the program, and I want to ask you a little bit about the center and how long it's been in existence and what it does.
Great. Well, we resolve conflict. We are low to no cost community-based mediation service. We've been around probably since 1986 informally with all volunteers, and then incorporated about 1996, but it wasn't till last year when we were awarded our first DRPA contract, that's Dispute Resolution Program Act, money through the county, that we were able to hire staff and really take form. And when the Public Law Center invited us into doing court mediations, that things really started to take off. So we're not very well known. We're a great kept secret, and we really appreciate being here today.
Well, great. Yeah, so you have been in existence for a while, since '86, but really becoming more formalized and public in the last year or so.
Yeah.
You have an office in Nevada City, not far from the courthouse. And tell us a little bit about your staff and the services that you offer.
Well, I'm it for staff, and I'm very part-time, and we wouldn't be here if it were not for our great volunteer mediation time. They're trained professionals, and they donate almost about 1,400 hours a year, a little bit more, of their time to provide this service in the community.
So you are the staff part-time.
Yes.
But I would assume you're also a volunteer in terms of the services you provide, as well as Diane, who is president of the center. So Diane, when did you get involved, and what's your background?
Okay, well, initially I got involved in becoming a mediator about 9 years ago. I'm a real estate broker in the area, have been for about 30 years. So negotiating with people kind of was second nature to me anyway. So it was easy for me, it was a natural thing for me. I was led to do mediations, I wanted to become involved in doing mediations for people because I saw so much damage done when people didn't mediate, didn't communicate with each other and try to work things out. So it became a passion for me, and that's why I decided to go into mediation and volunteer my services for CRC.
Well, there are a lot of conceptions and misconceptions of mediation. So please give us some background as to what it is. Diane, since you're doing it as a volunteer and you've had a lot of experience, 9 years or so, how would you describe mediation?
Mediation is a volunteer. People want to do it. They want to resolve their disputes, and it's empowering themselves to come up to their own solutions. Rather than going to court, which is costly litigation, that sort of thing, mediation brings two people together, or how many people together in a dispute, to resolve that dispute, and we are there as mediators to help facilitate that, not necessarily to advise, but to be there to listen to them, to make sure that they hear what the other person is saying, so they can resolve that dispute themselves. It's amazing to see the transition that happens once somebody has gone through that process. Being part of the process is pretty magic. You'd have to see it to understand what we're talking about right now. But if you've ever been in any dispute, most people have, what happens is the communication breaks down. And it's a big communication barrier. And skills in mediation helps to bring about that barrier being taken away.
So, Liz, you might want to amplify a little bit on the process, because what I hear is there is a lot of emphasis on listening. The mediator listens, draws out people. Go into that a little bit more.
We sometimes say in like lions and out like lambs, that sometimes people, especially around, say when we're in the public law center and the staff is there, they'll see people go in where you can cut the tension with the knife, and very angry, and they're sure mediation's not going to work. And the difference there would be, you know, go to the judge and litigate. You have a decision one way or another. You may like that decision. If you don't, you could appeal it. And then arbitration, you go before a judge person who listens to both sides and decides, and you can appeal it. And then there's mediation, where there's a neutral third party giving no legal advice, although when we mediate in the courts, we're there in the public law center, and so we do have legal advice that they can access and then come back into that neutral session. But pretty frequently what we do is we listen. I like to call it the blue click down words, almost like you're clicking down on with your mouse on your computer. You listen for those words that are key to the resolution and key to the conflict. What is it that's really hurting this person and really bothering them? And what is it they'd like to get out of today? What's their goal for today? What would make them happy if they walked away with X, Y, Z? And then we list that and come back to it and talk about it and hear both sides of that. Why can't we have it?
So you're neutral, you don't take sides.
Right.
You listen, you try to develop common ground, understanding. So what does it take, some of your background, training, what does it take to become a mediator?
Go ahead.
Well, you have to have mediators have to be trained in it. We train mediators to a 25-hour course minimum to get you started, and then you start observing mediations. There's ongoing training as you are a mediator in evaluating your own services as well as the person you're co-mediating with. When you mediate a dispute, the disputants actually evaluate the mediators as well. So that kind of, then we have a meeting and we go over those forms and address the situations, you know, figure out what should we do better, how can we make it better. And it's ongoing. It's not just becoming a mediator. It's an ongoing process. It's ongoing training. And something that wasn't mentioned, I'd like to bring up, is it's confidential too. All mediations are confidential. So, you know, you don't have to, I would say, put out your dirty laundry in a court hearing somewhere. You know, it's confidential between the parties that are there, and they like that.
Now, you also said it was low cost or cost-free. Could you explain that?
Because we do receive DRPA funds from the county, we never refuse to mediate with someone because of their ability to pay. We have a very low sliding scale for 2 mediators for up to 3 hours in the office. The maximum you'd ever pay with us would be $300, but it slides all the way down to a $25 case development fee, and then truly about 78 to 80% of what we do at no cost for some individuals. So we do find that when people pay a little something, they are a little bit more invested in sitting down and talking it out. But truly, we're not in competition with any attorneys or any attorney mediators where there might be bigger asset cases. These are cases who probably would not have access to this kind of service at all if it weren't for DRPA funding and CRC.
But it's not just appealing to low income, because mediation is something, you know, that applies to all income levels, all socioeconomic differentiate.
And everybody likes to save a little bit of money. When they start looking at what it would cost to really do this in court, $300 for 3 hours starts to look a lot better.
Yeah. And your sessions are 3 hours long?
Usually.
And we were talking earlier, you were saying that usually it's either the mediation is wrapped up in 1 3-hour session or perhaps 2?
Yeah, it depends on the case. Many times they'll need to come back, which is good, you know, because at least they've agreed to come back. They've left it with an agreement that they're going to continue to resolve the dispute and come back. And I think the magic begins is when you have the disputants that you agree together when they are in a dispute, and we are neutral. You know, we're a third-party neutral person. We are not involved in the dispute. We're there to facilitate and help them. So they feel free to talk to us and explain what the issues are. And as that process takes place and we find out what's the real underlying issues and we get to them, eventually the disputants will start talking to each other. And that's where I'm talking about the magic part. To me, that's where they're actually looking to resolving their dispute at that moment. And there is no set time frame. You know, sometimes it can happen in less than 3 hours, but I would say on an average, most mediations, except for court mediations.
When we're in the court, we go a little quicker.
Yeah, around 3 hours.
Around 3 hours. And I would imagine that some of these situations are pretty loaded emotionally. You know, people are hot, they're upset, otherwise they wouldn't be coming to you. And this is a conflict. So how do you deal with that kind of emotion?
Well, as the only paid staff, I'm always grateful for the volunteers that are willing to walk into the lion's den with people who are just, you know, ready to you know, just pop. They're so angry at each other. And what keeps them coming back and wanting to do mediation is that humanizing effect, especially, say, in this economy. We've done small claims, we do civil harassments, but we also do what we call UDs, or unlawful detainers, which are evictions. So you'll see kind of an unbalanced mediation where there's someone with some resources, say a landlord or a bank, and someone who maybe doesn't have resources anymore, and trying to get those to be balanced and to be heard. It's absolutely humanizing and gratifying just to negotiate even a day or two, or to not have an eviction on somebody's record so that they could find another home. It literally avoids homelessness and huge credit problems sometimes. And you'll often see the other party say, well, I'm not an ogre, or you know, just almost, well, as a humanizing, it's a wonderful life or something. It's how banks should be sometimes. But even in this times with foreclosures, you'll see banks bending over backwards sometimes to say, oh, well, we'll waive the legal fees and we'll give you half of the cost of, you know, they're just really trying to, or we'll let you in on a certain day or something so you can get the rest of your stuff out. Things like that make all the difference in the world to somebody who's in that position at their time, you know, that time in their life. It can be just critical to them to have an extra day, or, you know, someone who doesn't just stick right there or has to stick right there to the letter of the law, but can negotiate with them to come up with their own solution.
You know, often two people get caught in a dynamic where they just can't find any way to communicate, and it does take, whether it's a relationship, a marriage relationship, or a family problem, it often does take that third party, the neutral third party who has the skills and ability to listen and provide sort of a safe environment for those conversations to emerge.
Exactly, and it is safe, and we have ground rules, you know.
Such
as, you know, no cussing at each other, no swearing, no, you know.
Don't stand up, no name calling, no finger pointing.
You know, that sort of thing. You know, that is part of the process. Put those ideas up behind you and come in with an attitude of, we're going to try to help, you know, make this situation better for both of you. And they do. It's sometimes it gets a little heated, you know, in a mediation where people will feel a need and we'll have to take a break, and it's fine. It's perfectly fine to do that. And we'll tell them it's fine. If you want to take a break, let us know, you know. And it's a process, right. And the beginning of the process starts with venting, correct? That's the beginning of the process. One person gets to
Unload
say
the
their side.
ammunition.
Yep.
Yes.
Right.
Yep, and the other person, if they hear something they really hate and just think it's a dirty, rotten lie and it just makes them even more angry to hear it, they have pen and paper and they can write it down, and when it's their turn to speak, that's the time when they can talk about that. So they have a chance to not forget what it was they wanted to
be
say.
heard.
And to be heard.
Right.
And to be heard.
And it seems like, you know, we, as much as we all go to school, we often don't get this kind of training or this kind of education on how to handle conflict, how to, you know, how to get along. You know, we learn it informally. But one of the things that intrigued me is that you actually have training sessions for people to learn some mediation skills. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. We finalized one, last year, actually 3 last year, I believe. One of them was at the Association of Realtors. We put on a 25-hour training session there. And we have some very talented people that are joining our board now, that are also being trained as mediators and participating in mediations. We put on trainings for the police department, correct?
Yeah. Grass Valley Police Department invited us in for every single shift, and they actually accepted cards so that if they go out again and again to this conflict that nobody's really breaking any laws, but you know, it's not getting resolved, they can literally say, I'm referring you. I want you to go. Yeah. And we also train code compliance at Nevada County, who have to go out and give people bad news about building codes and things. So almost always there's some conflict in that situation, and they deal with that on a daily basis, bless their hearts. These are skills you can use at home, even.
Plus, we're going to be going to the schools. This is one of our goals this year, is to get into the schools for some training.
Well, maybe one of the things you can do on a later program is to actually teach us some mediation skills, because again, if you're going to go into the schools, here we are, maybe this could be a little classroom experiment in how people can better communicate with one another. So.
We can caucus, we can brainstorm, we can do all kinds. We'd love to come back and teach one. What we're looking for in the school is someone who'd like to be trained in mediation, like to actually sit on our board and get that experience as well. And then we'd like to kind of turn the resources that exist at CRC, which is about 25 fabulous trained volunteers, some of which are attorneys, marriage, family therapists, realtors, all walks of life, over to this maybe high school student person and say, how would you best use this? And I know we've got a great community, but we do have some incidents of violence where kids are ganging up now on each other sometimes that we haven't seen maybe as much before. And these things can be avoided by talking it out and having conflict resolution available to you.
You're never too young and you're never too old. So one of the things I hear you saying is that if you perhaps have a business with employees who could benefit from some of these, you know, sometimes there's conflict in the employment place. Sometimes people just need to learn better social skills with how to deal with the public. So you're available to give a training course to people.
Yes, that's part of our mission is to do that, to provide people with those skills so that they can, you know, resolve and some of their disputes among themselves without having, you know, to go, you know, take it to court or whatever.
You might think about going to some of the city council meetings and approaching everyone about laying down some ground rules as to how to better resolve conflicts, because you know this community is endless with conflicts.
That's true, and as in every community. I mean, we're not, you know, singled out from that, but
I think we're intelligent and polarized and vocal.
Right, which is a good place to start. You know, but I would like to feel that there's also more common ground. I'm always of the belief that we have more in common than we do that separates us. And if we could focus on more of what we share, we would be less polarized.
And Lew, that's exactly what conflict resolution does. It looks for the universals, and it looks for the win-win, and it tries to bring peace and a little harmony, and make sure people are heard and have a voice in their own solution. Statistics say that when mediation is used, the incidence of compliance with the settlement, so to speak, actually goes up as opposed to when the judge says, you win, you lose, and you pay. When it's mediated, they said, well, I agreed to do that myself. And there's a sense of honor in there that compels people to actually follow through on their agreements and their payments. And about 86% of what we do in the courts settles. And this year anyway, 100% of what we've done in the community in our office has settled. As opposed to, because you always have the option to go to court, you lose nothing when you mediate. You know, you can still go to court if you want to. But most people find that human spark and do find some common ground, some universals that they can agree on, that they think are fair, and can walk away with a settlement without much time involved. It's quick. We can usually schedule it within a week and affordable. After hours is even available, so you don't have to wait for your court date. And you don't lose anything by trying it.
That's great. And again, going back to some of the statistics, your success rate is pretty phenomenal. You have work in the office, which is more personal, would you say, less litigious or less court involved?
It can be. We have a little bit more case development time, and I can maybe handpick some mediators, although typically we tend to use everybody the same and just go right through the line. But if someone says, I need someone who really understands realty, or I really need, I need someone who really understands relationships. We have marriage family therapists that are mediators. I really do need an attorney in this one. We have attorneys that are mediators. So if there's
So you pull from
reason.
your resource bank and you try to match. And that happens after people call and give you sort of a rundown on what the problems are.
And then we usually have a little bit more time in the office. That 3-hour session doesn't always happen when there's a court date. So sometimes those can resolve in about an hour or so. And they know they need to go right back to the judge, so that option's right there.
And then what makes the difference between an office visit and a court date? What is that? Is that client initiated? Is that court initiated?
That's a great question. Usually it's client initiated that comes into the office, or they know they have a court date coming and they'd prefer to try mediation before that court date, so they have some chance to see if they can make a difference that way first. Right. But sometimes on the morning of court, people don't even know they're going to be asked if they'd like to do mediation or not. They go before the judge, and the judge looks at it and says, I think you guys should go try mediation first. Try that and come back. So that can be a surprise to them. And I think sometimes that has a little bit of effect in the outcome. What do you think?
Yes, I do. I think that it has a huge effect in the outcome. That they realize that they have an opportunity, to try to resolve that.
It seems like the courts may or may not be fully aware, because I've been involved in some court disputes where mediation would have been a viable option, and yet it was never offered. It was never vocalized. So maybe even the courts and the judges need to be better informed.
I think they are. I think the courts and the judges are very informed about the mediation. I just think that the public, necessarily needs to be more educated in the fact that that is a viable alternative to going to court. And
I would say we've had a tremendous shift in terms of judges using us, knowing about us, referring to us, and seeing us in the court on a regular basis once we received last year's funding from the county. It makes it possible just to be there all the time. And so
and it's easy to see that what you do really does take work off of the shoulders of the courts. The more mediation you do, the less the courts will be backed up with work. And we all know that court dates are sometimes hard to get.
Exactly, and it's a win-win for the courts as well as us, and as well as the people that are, having the problem, the dispute,
And then they're not really tied to that thin letter of the law. They really are able to say, here's what I feel I should do. Right. And it can be whatever they decide.
Right.
They get to craft it themselves.
Often in court, really, you're not able to verbalize. You're not able to express yourself. It's all very controlled, and it's usually in the hands of lawyers, and the judge, and the participants don't really get to say a whole lot.
And mediation, you're crafting your own resolution.
Right.
You really are.
And it is confidential, but I can remember once having a small claims mediation that actually exceeded the amount that would normally be given in small claims, because as they got talking, they decided there were some other issues that they might as well clean up while they're there. So the judge was surprised and thought, well, this is more than I could have even, done myself here.
Right.
But it was what the two parties decided worked for them, and I think it probably saved another lawsuit that they both thought would be a separate lawsuit because of the amount. But
well, given the recessionary times that we're in, and we're looking at not only clients saving money, but government saving money, court costs. What does it cost to put on a court case? This is a very viable option. You are community-based. You are low or no cost.
right.
You are a volunteer organization for the most part, very minimally funded, and you are completely available to the public. I mean, what more could you ask for as a way in which to deal with our current problems? I mean, not only is it a win-win, but I mean, it seems like it's really a way in which a model for social conflict resolution.
And governments do use mediation.
Yes.
One of our mediators is a retired school administrator who was part of mediations in the LA area with gangs, where they literally were holding the school hostage and were marking territory, and kids couldn't go to class, and they were able to bring the gangs to the table and negotiate that the school itself would be neutral territory and people could go and get an education. That's pretty touching.
Right. Well, this is great. So I want to thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank
Diane
you so
Helms,
much.
President of the Conflict Resolution Center and also realtor in the area for over 30 years.
Yes.
Liz Mantle, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as the Executive Director of the Conflict Resolution Center. So please come back. We want to take some lessons. And I want to thank the viewers for watching NCTV interviews, and hopefully you've learned something in the process. I also want to thank our volunteer crew, Wade Amsbury and Gail Woodman, as well as Marilyn Blom and Bill Carquest and Mike Leach. Thank you all. Also Jasmine in the back. And encourage you to get involved with NCTV. It is also a volunteer organization. Produce your own shows. Bring something of value to the public. We reach over 10,000 homes. So hopefully this will be something you'll continue to watch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.